so I'm meeting here today with Peter Webley. He's a researcher at the university. He's got his PhD with research expertise spanning a wide range of earth sciences. One of the aspects of his research deals with unmanned aerial systems, or UAVs or drones, and attaching sensors to collect data as the unmanned aircraft go to places that humans can't easily get to. But he's got a pretty diverse background, more so than most researchers. He's a faculty member at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, but he's also built his own company. He hails from the UK, actually from England. And I recently learned that he's got a legit dog. No kidding. We were talking about this recently, and he was telling me about how he had the option to show his dogs in dog shows. And that's when I realized that I've just got a regular old dog. So Peter, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Mark, for the opportunity to chat with you, and thanks for the introduction on my background and all the work that I do, and also the personal bit about the little story about my dog. So back to you. But yeah, great to be here.
So Peter, tell me, what gets you excited about innovation in Alaska?
So innovation in Alaska is really what gets me going, and what gets me interested is how we can make a difference, how we can bring new capabilities, new innovative ideas to work with the local inhabitants of Alaska, those working here, to really just innovate, to be able to be resilient and sustainable in the Alaskan communities and the Alaskan landscape. And that's what interests me and gets me interested in just how innovation can benefit Alaska, is how we can make us a more resilient state, and those being able to stay in their communities and continue to grow and develop those communities.
So if you think about it, where do you think the greatest potential lies for innovation now in the next 5 years? What are the trends you're seeing either in the startup community or university research, or the larger economic trends in Alaska where you're excited about innovation making an impact?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question, and really focuses in on sort of where do we see the greatest growth that's going to benefit the state. And Alaska is a economy where energy is a significant part of what we look at every day. We're a state where there's a lot of communities living off the road network, so air transportation and the need to get cargoes and materials into those environments. But then just the remoteness of Alaska means that there's a need for autonomous-based observations, autonomous-based systems. But I think if I step back, and my background in, as you highlighted, unmanned aerial systems and unmanned aircraft systems, I see the innovation in the transportation industry, whether it's air cargo, whether it's improved efficient ways of transporting goods, transporting medical. University has a big biomedical capability. That I see is an area where Alaska is going to be a leader in testing new technologies. That becomes the innovation. Alaska is a test bed, test site for these technologies, but also where they can really benefit the Alaska economy, the Alaskan communities, so they can be more resilient to stay in those communities because they have an increase in their transportation capacity.
So tell me a specific example. Like you're talking about innovation in transportation as relates to all aspects of life. Like what's going on? Either something you're working on, or projects you see coming on the horizon, or opportunities you see coming.
Yeah, I think the biggest one I'm seeing is community to community medical transportation. That we think of the famous dog races and the Iditarod and the Yukon, and we go back to what they were set up to do, was to move medical supplies between communities. We now are at a point where we're moving technology forwards where unmanned systems, whatever they might be, can be able to be used to maneuver those supplies between communities. So therefore they can respond to needs of those communities. That's where it could be heavy lift items. It could be small unmanned systems moving from community to community that's maybe 5-10 miles apart, where it's just hard to do on the ground. Or it could be Fairbanks as a hub to other rural communities where we're able to get those supplies, those critical supplies. And that can be everyday supplies, but also responding during a significant event, whether it's the pandemic that we're living in, or responding to a natural event that is in that environment, where the road network, or you can't get in because of flooding or river ice blockages, or a volcanic eruption that's causing a lack of transportation. You can start to use these systems to actually respond and still keep the transportation network going. In parallel to existing systems, you're innovating on top of the existing transportation network.
So what do we already have to make that innovation and economic development happen? And what do we still need? What
question? Yeah. So in terms of what we have, well, we have academic researchers that are focusing on the integration of these systems into the national airspace. We have an FAA test site based at the University of Alaska Fairbanks called Aquasi. We have businesses in Alaska that are looking at unmanned autonomous systems. We have entities outside Alaska looking at Alaska as a place to test their sensors that will be part of this transportation network. So we have university capabilities, we have access to the airspace and working with getting access to these aircraft, and we have groups looking to Alaska as a place to test these sensors. I think what we're looking for is maybe the next growth and the next innovation is how to partner those two areas together, how to partner the academic capacity and the industry need into operational systems that can be flown and actually used by those communities to get their supplies in. So the innovation is the partnership to make those test examples and then operations happen. We've got capacity in access to getting the permissions for the airspace. We've got some businesses in state and outside the state that are looking. It's now actually actualizing that and making that happen. So the innovation is going to need to be in the partnership development to make the project work.
So if you had to say a couple job titles, like who are the people we need to make that link?
Probably in terms of positions, I think like local logistics experts, having somebody in a community that's got the skills to operate the aircraft when it gets to the ground, because you're going to need somebody that can maneuver off the supplies, being able to then support the flight team that's transporting the goods. So that's local capacity building. Workforce development is going to be a factor of that. So you have somebody in a rural community with the skills to be part of the logistics team. Just like if you're flying in a manned aircraft, you've got somebody locally that's working with them on removing the supplies. So somebody that's got that capability, let's say there's an issue with the aircraft when it lands in a community, somebody that's got some level of engineering background that can help ensure that the aircraft can return back to the main hub or take the next cargo back so it's not going back empty. Just like you have in a ground-based transportation network, you've got trained personnel in the locations where the vehicle is going to. The same thing is going to be needed in the unmanned or the autonomous system world of these locally trained, locally based. So therefore they're building their family and growing the community, but they have the skills to be part of this network.
Does this model exist at a more advanced level anywhere else?
It's in terms of the integration of the autonomous systems, there's different places in the United States where there's these other test sites that are looking to do this. But I think lessons learned from the general ground transportation community, and there's groups like UPS and others that are looking to go airborne as well, because they have an airborne component as well as a ground component to their transportation. So I think that there's lessons learned from those where it can be adapted to be an unmanned autonomous system in the transportation world. But I think some of the innovation is going to be in the training needed and what is the capacity of the individual needed that may be different than what's needed to be a logistics manager for a ground transportation or a manned system versus an unmanned system. You might need specific engineering skills or specific capabilities to be able to remove the supplies off the aircraft. And that's where an academic institution like UAF can then have those skills transferred to the student, who then graduates with that training and can then be part of the workforce.
All right, so with your expertise, you'll have a more refined vision of what the future in this space could look like. So walk me through a scenario or a system in this space that is very futuristic, you know, that maybe I couldn't even imagine, or that I don't quite have the context to even think up. So like, where's this going, or like, what's a dream of where this could go?
Yeah, great question. Sort of, where's the moonshot type of approach in the innovation? You hear this word, you aim for the moon, and you end up with something that's closer to reality that actually then is implemented in the real world, rather than always an aspiration. You want to get to something that actually can be used and what you would call operationalized and actually implemented. So think of your in a community, and traditionally you have a manned aircraft come in, but then you're needing a medical hub is needing some supplies. They communicate with the sort of regional hub and say, hey, we're getting low on particular supplies at the moment. We're seeing an influx of community members needing a particular drug or a particular medical, so we need more medical equipment. They log onto a system, type it in, and say, okay, we need to have our increased. We need to have some more supplies come in. We're seeing a maxing out of our capacity, and the larger hub goes, yeah, no problem, clicks a button, and aircraft is then could either be manually added. I'm even thinking in the future it could be automatically added as a payload, and the aircraft takes off. It's following a known route. It knows where it needs to land. It's going to the location of where that smaller community needs its supplies. It's being tracked by a ground station of systems that can determine where it is relative to any other aircraft in the airspace. It lands, person goes out, who's from the smaller community, and supplies are there. They take it off the aircraft. Then the aircraft knows that the person taps into their iPad or computer system and says, yeah, picked it up, just like a driver drops off a package, and the aircraft takes off, goes back on its automated pattern, back to its regional hub, and it then sits waiting for its next delivery request. The moonshot idea is you still have a human in the loop, but they're just watching the automated process of the drug being packaged, put onto the package tray, going onto the aircraft, fly, land, being taken off, going through, and then the person in the regional health service has their package in their hand, but you've still got somebody in the loop watching the automated system going through. But it's a crawl, walk, run process. So there's different stages and different phases. You would need a truly beyond line of sight operations. You would need a system tested to know that it's going to be able to react to any other aircraft or anything else in the airspace. It can take off and land safely. And that's why it's these steps moving forwards with the aim to go towards having these autonomous systems be part of a cargo network.
Great, thanks. You mentioned moonshots, and I think that's a valuable ideation technique for coming up with new ideas, developing them, and kind of letting it evolve. But it can be an active process. I think that segues well to the work at Center Ice. I should have mentioned earlier, another large component of your work is at Center Ice. Can you tell us what Center Ice is and what they're up to these days?
Yes, thanks for the question. So Center Ice is Center for Innovation, Commercialization, and Entrepreneurship, and we're based at the University of Alaska Fairbanks here in the interior of the state. And we have a mission and a vision to support entrepreneurs in the academic environment, moving their research towards the next level of commercialization, and then helping them connect to businesses to license their technology, working with the university's technology transfer office, but also focusing in on the early stage ideation, whether it's pitch events, seed funding, gap funding, and really accelerating the innovation from the early stage through to ready for commercialization and potential licensing from an existing business or even helping the faculty form their own business. So we have multiple different programs, but the aim of it is how we support the entrepreneurs on their journey through programming, through training, through funding support, and through building their network so they have partners to go and grow and scale up their business in Alaska.
Is Center Ice geared toward the university, the general public, both?
So yeah, so Center Ice itself has a sort of footprint looking in both directions. There is a, being based at the university in Alaska Fairbanks, it does look to support those entrepreneurs and those innovations within the academic environment, and also support those across the University of Alaska system, whether it be University of Alaska Anchorage or University of Alaska Southeast. But it's also got a footprint to support those startup entrepreneurs and innovators outside the university environment, whether it be through training so they're better prepared to go for grant opportunities, or how to partner with academic researchers to get some of those technologies transferred out and applied in Alaska for the benefit of Alaskans.
So you mentioned the Center Ice Innovation Accelerator. Is that a business accelerator, or is it something different?
So the Innovation Accelerator is different to a business accelerator. It's an accelerator of programming to move an entrepreneur or innovator through the different phases of development as they go from their ideation phase. You see on behind me here examples of an ideation process where you're basically just putting up all the possible plethora of options and ideas that you might have to look to try and solve a problem that you see in the industry or even in an academic environment, all the way through to you've got that, you've developed it out, you've done some customer discovery, you're looking to spin out a business, got some technology that's looking for licensing. How can you then move forward and apply for some of these federal national grants in the small business world? So the accelerator is accelerating innovation through that process. And wherever you are on your journey, there's a particular programming that you can fit into, and you can join it at the beginning, in the early stage, the ideation stage, the dream stage, all the way through to the actuation and the operation and commercialization of that research.
So you're a researcher at the university, and you've produced some innovative solutions yourself and built a company around it. Can you describe what innovation looks like at the university? How does it occur? Who's doing it? What is the mindset of those people? How do they arrive at a product?
So yeah, so in terms of the university environment, as a academic looking to do research, we really are all innovators. We're innovating upon the research that's gone on by others. But there's also the innovation to producing an applied research product from that work. So there's people that are doing basic research, and there's also those looking to do applied research. So in the academic setting, what you're doing is you're looking at the broader impacts of your research that you're performing. And therefore you're innovating to produce a solution to a need, whether that's in your research field or an industry need or a community, so an actual population community need. And then in the business world, you're developing you've got these innovative ideas, but you're innovating to produce a product that is going to be used by a user, a stakeholder, a customer, whoever that might be. So you're discovering what your customer would be needing, and therefore you're innovating to have a must-have product or a must-have solution rather than a nice-to-have, because otherwise they'll go, oh, that's nice to have. You come back to them and say, hey, we've developed this solution, and they go, oh, I'm not really interested now. Whereas if it becomes a must-have solution, they're going to want it no matter when you come back to them. You've got a captive user for that. And then, so therefore the research is innovative, but you're looking at the broader impacts of that to have an applied or an application in the community, whether it be the community of Alaska, a village, a town, or the industry being directly usable by a business.
Well, great, Peter. Thanks for your time. It's really inspirational to hear the combination of your research and the innovation ecosystem building that you're doing. And thanks for all your hard work.
Thanks, Mark. It's great to be able to sort of highlight all the work that's going on and how we're aspiring to grow and develop the state of Alaska, and sort of focus in on those places where we can make a really big difference, both working in the academic environment and also listening to and working with those in the community and finding out what we can do together to co-produce something that then is applied and for the benefit of the state.